Jason's heart pounded as he turned the key in the ignition of his brand new sports car, a midnight blue machine so sleek it gleamed under the afternoon sun like liquid metal. After months of scrimping and sacrificing, this moment was everything he had dreamed of. His new home in Willow Creek Estates wasn't just a fresh start. It was a statement, the kind of neighborhood where families thrived. Lawns were manicured to perfection, and life felt perfect as he pulled up his driveway, admiring the way the sun hit the smooth curves of his car. Jason's smile froze. At the edge of the cul-de-sac, standing with arms crossed and a severe look that could chill lava, was Karen. Everyone in the neighborhood called her the HOA Karen, the self-appointed queen of rules, restrictions, and petty complaints. Her reputation was legendary. She was the kind of woman who knew every HOA bylaw by heart, wielded them like a sword, and never hesitated to use them against anyone who dared to step out of line. Karen's eyes locked onto Jason's car with a cold, calculating stare. She took a slow step forward, her lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line. It was the kind of look that whispered, "You're going to regret parking that here." Jason forced himself not to look away. He gave a friendly nod, hoping to break the ice. "Hey, I'm Jason. Just moved in at number 27. Karen's gaze didn't soften. "I know who you are, and I know that car doesn't comply with our community's parking rules." Her voice was clipped, her tone sharp. "You might want to read the HOA handbook before you decide where to park in my neighborhood." Jason blinked, caught off guard. I thought the driveway was fine." Karen's smile was tight, not reaching her eyes. "Not if it's visible from the street. You're already off to a rocky start." She turned abruptly and walked away, heels clicking like a countdown to an impending storm. Jason watched her retreat, a sinking feeling settling in his stomach. He wasn't sure why this woman had singled him out the moment he arrived, but something about her didn't sit right. It was as if she was waiting for a reason to make his life difficult. Later that evening, as Jason unpacked boxes inside his new home, his phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from the HOA group chat. The subject line was, "Blunt, parking violation, immediate action required." Attached was a photo. His car, parked exactly as it had been, but with a big red circle and an arrow pointing at it. The message read, "All residents are reminded that vehicles must be parked fully within garage or designated spots, not visible from the street. Failure to comply will result in fines." Jason's fingers hovered over the keyboard, torn between frustration and disbelief. This was his home now. Why was the community's gatekeeper so quick to attack him? That night, sleep came fitfully, haunted by the cold stare of Karen's eyes. What had he really walked into? The neighborhood might look peaceful and picture perfect, but beneath that manicured surface, Jason could feel the tension simmering, like a thin ice sheet ready to crack beneath his feet as he drifted into a restless sleep. The thought that lingered most sharply was this: who was Karen really, and what would she do next? The weekend brought a neighborhood BBQ, an event Jason had hoped would help him break the ice and start fresh. But as he pulled up in his car, excitement mixed uneasily with a knot in his stomach. The quiet tension from his first encounter with Karen still hung in the air like fog. He stepped out, greeted by the warm chatter of neighbors, laughing around picnic tables, and kids chasing each other with water guns. The smell of grilled burgers and freshly cut grass filled the warm spring air. It should have been perfect, almost immediately. Jason spotted Karen. She stood near the food table, surrounded by a small group of neighbors who hung on her every word. Her posture was impeccable, every inch the queen of the cul-de-sac, but her eyes sharpened as they landed on Jason. Jason approached with a hopeful smile. "Hey, Karen, I just wanted to say thanks for the welcome note." He held out his hand, but she barely glanced at it. Karen's smile was polite but icy. "Jason, welcome to Willow Creek Estates. I'm just here to make sure the neighborhood runs smoothly. We have standards." She nodded toward his car, parked, again, just a little, too far out of the garage for her liking. Jason's smile faltered. "I'm trying to follow the rules, but I thought parking in the driveway was okay." Karen's eyes narrowed. "It's visible from the street. That's the problem. You need to keep it inside the garage or designated spots. Rules are rules. We all agreed to them when we moved here." Jason's jaw tightened. "I don't think you need to be so harsh about it." Karen's lips curled into a thin smirk. "It's not harsh to enforce the rules. It's called responsibility. Some people here take that seriously." Her tone implied, "You're not one of them." The neighbors nearby exchanged quiet glances. Jason felt their eyes on him, like a spotlight in an interrogation room. Trying to steer the conversation back to neutral ground, Jason said, "I just want to be part of the community. No hard feelings." Karen tilted her head, her gaze piercing. "Community means respecting the rules. If you can't do that, you're not welcome." Her voice dropped just enough for only Jason to hear. "Consider this your first, and only, warning." Before Jason could reply, Karen turned sharply, her heels clicking against the concrete, and disappeared into the crowd. Whispers followed, her retreat like a trail of shadows. Jason felt a sting, not just from her words, but from the feeling of isolation creeping in. The neighborhood was already aligning, sides quietly forming, and he was standing alone. That night, he scrolled through the HOA website, hunting for the exact parking rules. Nothing was as strict or vague as Karen had claimed. The more he dug, the more something felt off. Just as he was about to close his laptop, a sudden ping interrupted his thoughts. A new message popped up in the HOA group chat. Another warning about his parking, but this time with a deadline. "Remove your car from visible driveway by tomorrow, or face fines." Jason's pulse quickened. This wasn't just about a car anymore. It was a test, a battle of wills, and Karen was already setting the rules in a way that only she seemed to understand. He glanced out the window at the dark silhouette of his car, parked where it always had been, proud and defiant under the street lamp's glow. Tomorrow wasn't just about moving a car. It was about standing his ground. As he lay awake that night, the question echoed louder than before. What exactly was Karen's game? And how far would she go to make him regret moving here? Jason woke up to a dull ache in his chest, a restless mix of frustration and worry. The deadline Karen had imposed loomed over him like a dark cloud. He spent the morning pacing the driveway, debating whether to move his car into the garage. Despite the tight squeeze, the thought of giving in to Karen's unreasonable demands gnawed at his pride. But that afternoon, just as Jason returned from work, the neighborhood fell eerily silent. Something was wrong. His steps quickened toward the driveway, heart pounding. The sleek midnight blue of his car was still there, but the surface told a brutal story. Long jagged scratches marred the driver's side, scraping deep into the paint like angry claws. The front bumper bore a dent so fresh, it looked like a fist had smashed into it. Jason's breath caught. He circled the car slowly, running his fingers gently over the damaged metal, disbelief crashing over him like cold water. His prized possession, the symbol of his fresh start, was violated. He looked around. The street was empty, but from the ice corner of his eye, he caught a figure slipping behind the hedge. His heart leapt. "Hey!" Jason called out, but the figure disappeared like a ghost, No chance to catch a face. No chance for justice. Neighbors began to step outside, drawn by the noise. Jason noticed Karen standing a few houses down, arms folded, watching silently with a faint, knowing smirk. His blood boiled. Whispers started immediately, circulating through the neighborhood like wildfire. Some said Jason had parked illegally. Again, others speculated it was just a random act of vandalism, but the tight knot in Jason's gut told him otherwise. He confronted Karen later that evening at a small HOA gathering, his voice low but tense. "Did you see anything suspicious today?" Karen's eyes glinted with cold amusement. "Jason, I don't know what you're implying, but maybe you should reconsider your parking habits, instead of accusing neighbors without proof." Jason clenched his fists. "You don't have proof either, but I have a feeling who's behind this." Karen laughed softly, the sound cutting sharper than any blade. "You're new here. You don't understand how things work." Jason left the gathering, with his head spinning. He realized the battle was no longer just about rules or cars. It was personal. Determined to find the truth, Jason spent the next days discreetly asking neighbors for any information. Most were tight-lipped, wary of Karen's influence. One elderly couple, Mrs. Jacobs and Mr. Lee, cautiously admitted they had seen Karen lurking near his driveway late at night, but feared speaking out would bring retaliation. Jason's frustration grew. He was trapped in a neighborhood that felt less like a community and more like a battlefield. Late one night, after yet another restless sleep, Jason checked the security camera he'd hastily installed the day after the attack. His heart raced as the footage loaded. Time sped forward. Then, there, under the glare of the street lamp, was a shadowy figure circling his car. The figure bent down, pressed something sharp against the driver's side. Jason leaned closer. Could it be Karen's unmistakable silhouette? But before he could be certain, the figure looked up, revealing a mask. Whoever was behind the attack didn't want to be identified. Jason sat back, stunned. The attack was personal, calculated, and meant to send a message. The question now was no longer just who did it, but what came next. The silent war had begun, and Jason had to decide: fight back or lose everything he'd worked so hard to build. Jason barely slept that week. Every shadow in his home seemed to flicker with threat, every creak in the floorboards a reminder that he wasn't alone in his fight. Karen's silent war wasn't just about his car anymore. It was a full-scale assault on his life in Willow Creek Estates. The morning started with a terse note slipped under his door. An official-looking HOA letter accusing him of excessive noise disturbances and failure to maintain property standards. Jason stared at it, incredulous. He hadn't played music loudly or thrown any parties. It was clear this was another move in Karen's game. But what struck him even deeper was the message attached, written in shaky handwriting. Next time, it won't be just a letter. Jason's heart pounded. The threat was unmistakable. Determined to push back, he went to the HOA office the next day, hoping to speak with someone reasonable. Instead, he was met with cold smiles and polite dismissals. The new HOA secretary avoided his questions and referred him back to Karen's iron grip. Back home, things worsened. His work schedule, usually quiet and unremarkable, suddenly became a target. Karen filed complaints about his frequent comings and goings at odd hours, insinuating he was up to no good. The local police even stopped by for a vague welfare check, questioning Jason about his activities. He was stunned. The harassment was crossing legal boundaries. Even his beloved dog Max became a pawn. Karen accused him of repeated violations of the community's pet rules, leash laws, and barking noise complaints that neighbors had never mentioned before. Jason felt the noose tightening around his life, choking the joy out of his new beginning. One evening, worn down and desperate, Jason met Mrs. Jacobs and Mr. Lee again. Their voices were hushed, eyes darting nervously. "Karen's got this place wrapped around her finger," Mrs. Jacobs said softly. "She's got dirt on half the board members. If you want help, you'll need proof, something she can't deny." Jason's mind raced. The invisible chains binding the neighborhood were stronger than he imagined. Karen wasn't just a bully. She was a puppeteer, controlling the strings behind the scenes. That night, Jason installed additional security cameras around his property, angling them to catch any suspicious activity. He began to record everything. Every knock on the door, every car passing by. His life was becoming a constant watch, a trap of paranoia and vigilance. Weeks passed, and Karen's tactics grew more brazen. One morning, Jason awoke to find a thick layer of glue smeared across his car's windshield. The words, "Go home," were scratched deeply into the passenger door. His neighbors' reactions were mixed. Some offered quiet sympathy, while others whispered that Jason was stirring trouble. The community, once welcoming, was fracturing. Jason knew the time was coming for a decisive move. He couldn't keep running or hiding. Karen was trying to break him, and if he gave in, the neighborhood would lose its soul. As he sat alone in his living room, surrounded by evidence of harassment, a new thought struck him. If she wants a war, she'll get one, but it won't be on her terms. Jason's resolve hardened. The silent war had turned into a battle of wills, and he was ready to fight back. Jason sat at his kitchen table, the dim light casting long shadows across a chaotic spread of papers, photos, and USB drives. His fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline. He had finally found his secret weapon. It started a few days ago when Jason installed discrete security cameras around his property, strategically placed to capture every inch of his driveway and the street. At first, he thought they might only offer peace of mind, but the footage had revealed something far more sinister. One night, just past midnight, the grainy black and white video showed a figure creeping toward his car. The person moved slowly, deliberately, almost as if they were savoring the moment. Jason leaned closer, heart hammering. The hood cast a shadow over the face, but the posture and walk were unmistakable. It was Karen. The camera caught her pulling a sharp object from her pocket, a screwdriver glinting faintly in the streetlight. She crouched beside the car, pressing the tool into the driver's side panel and dragging it along the paint. The damage from that night, the deep scratches, the dent, had been her work. Jason replayed the clip, jaw clenched, proof at last, but it didn't end there. Over the following days, he started picking up suspicious phone calls on his burner phone, static and hushed voices, followed by clicks. His investigation led him to uncover voicemail messages from an unknown number, threatening him to stop stirring the pot or face consequences worse than vandalism. His gut told him Karen was orchestrating more than just petty harassment. She was running a covert campaign of intimidation, one meant to crush anyone who challenged her authority. Jason knew that exposing her recklessly could tear the entire neighborhood apart. The HOA meetings, the board members, many were either intimidated by Karen or, worse, complicit. Mrs. Jacobs' warning echoed in his mind. You need proof she can't deny. Tonight was the night. Jason invited a few cautious neighbors, those who had quietly sympathized with his plight, to a late evening gathering in his garage. He called it a community watch meeting. The garage lights flickered, and the hum of the projector filled the room as he connected his laptop. As the video played, the room went deathly silent. Faces hardened, disbelief giving way to shock and anger. Karen's cold smile, her stealthy movements, her calculated destruction of Jason's property, all captured in undeniable clarity. One neighbor whispered, "Why would she go this far?" Jason cleared his throat. "Because she wants control. She's been manipulating the HOA board, silencing dissent, and punishing anyone who doesn't bow to her rules." The group exchanged worried glances. For the first time, Jason sensed a shift, a crack in Karen's armor. But the question remained, what next? Jason outlined a plan to bring the evidence to the HOA board meeting. The perfect opportunity to confront Karen publicly. If the board failed to act, he would escalate the matter to the city council and local media. The fight for the neighborhood's soul was no longer just his. It was theirs. As the meeting ended, Jason felt a surge of hope mixed with unease. Karen wouldn't go down quietly. He was sure she was already planning her next move. But now he had the upper hand, and he was ready to use it. The night before the HOA meeting, Willow Creek Estates felt colder than usual. Jason stood on his porch, staring out at the quiet street where his battle with Karen had unfolded. The streetlights cast long, eerie shadows over the manicured lawns, each one a silent witness to the escalating war he had spent the last week preparing, rehearsing his presentation, and rallying a small group of neighbors who were finally willing to stand with him. The footage from his security cameras was locked and loaded, ready to expose Karen's destructive vendetta for everyone to see. But Jason couldn't shake the feeling that Karen wasn't going to make it easy. In fact, he feared she might try something drastic. Before the meeting even began, that afternoon, as Jason reviewed his notes, his phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. The message was chilling and brief. "Stop digging, or your car won't be the only thing damaged." His heart skipped a beat, but he refused to let fear take hold. Instead, he texted back with steady fingers, "Bring it on!" The tension was unbearable as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the neighborhood in twilight. Jason arrived at the community center early, the place buzzing with residents whispering about the upcoming showdown. Some glanced at him with sympathy. Others eyed him warily, still unsure where their loyalties lay. Karen arrived shortly after, her entrance commanding attention. She wore her usual stern expression, but there was something different, an edge of defiance, maybe even desperation. She knew the game was changing. The meeting began with the usual formalities, but Jason felt every second ticking toward the moment he would confront her. Finally, his turn came. He stood up, cleared his throat, and addressed the crowd. "Thanks you all for coming. I'm here to talk about what's really been happening in our neighborhood, beyond the rules and bylaws. This is about trust, respect, and the kind of community we want to live in." With a click, he played the security footage. The room fell into stunned silence as Karen's image appeared on the screen. Caught in the act of vandalizing his car, gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen's lips pressed into a hard line. She tried to speak, but Jason held up a hand. "Let me finish." He detailed the months of harassment, the false complaints, the threatening notes, the intimidation tactics. Faces around the room grew tense, some nodding in agreement, others shifting uncomfortably. Then, he revealed the threatening text he had received that very day. underscoring how far Karen's campaign of terror had gone. Karen's eyes flashed, with fury. "This is all lies! A smear campaign to ruin my reputation!" she shouted. But the damage was done. The HOA board members exchanged uneasy glances. The once unshakable queen of the neighborhood was now cornered. Before the board could decide, the room's lights flickered and went out, plunging everyone into darkness. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. Emergency lights buzzed on moments later. But the tension had thickened. The darkness felt symbolic. An ominous pause in the battle. When the lights returned, Jason noticed Karen was gone. Whispers erupted. Had she fled? Was she planning her next move? The board quickly called for a recess, promising to investigate the footage and consider disciplinary actions. Jason stepped outside into the cool night air, his chest tight but resolute. The storm had gathered, but the fight for Willow Creek Estates was far from over. The day after the HOA meeting felt like a war zone. Jason's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Texts, calls, even messages on social media flooded in from neighbors. Some offered support and gratitude for his courage. Others warned him to be careful, whispering that Karen wasn't done yet. Jason sat at his kitchen table, surrounded by coffee cups and scattered notes, trying to piece together what had happened after the lights went out. The sudden blackout had seemed suspiciously timed, an attempt to disrupt the meeting and allow Karen to slip away unnoticed. He wasn't wrong. Within hours, Karen's counterattack began. That morning, Jason's mailbox was stuffed with anonymous letters, threatening notes disguised as polite warnings. One accused him of falsifying evidence and disrupting community harmony. Another hinted that his job could be at risk if he continued stirring trouble. As the days passed, more strange things happened. His tires were slashed, forcing him to replace them at a steep cost. Flyers appeared on his windshield, warning him to leave before it's too late. Even Max, his loyal dog, disappeared for several hours, only to be found wandering nervously near a busy street. Jason's neighbors, who had shown support, suddenly grew distant. Fear of Karen's influence was palpable. Mrs. Jacobs and Mr. Lee barely answered his calls. The HOA board sent a letter stating they would investigate the matter, but no concrete actions followed. Jason realized Karen's web of control was far more entrenched than he imagined. One evening, as he returned home from work, Jason found his front yard vandalized again. This time, the word liar was spray-painted across his garage door in bright red. The message was clear. Jason wasn't just fighting for his car or his reputation anymore. He was fighting for his safety, his home, and his sanity. But despite the mounting pressure, Jason refused to back down. Late that night, he sat in his darkened living room, formulating a new plan. If the HOA and the neighbors wouldn't act, he would take this fight public. He began drafting a detailed report, complete, with timestamps, video evidence, and witness statements, to send to the local news station and city council. Jason knew it was risky. Going public could make him a target, but it could also expose Karen's tyranny and force the authorities to intervene. Just as he was about to hit send, his phone buzzed again, this time a video message from an unknown number. His breath caught as the screen showed a shadowy figure lurking outside his home, moving deliberately toward his front door. A chilling message followed. Last chance to walk away. Jason's hands shook, but his resolve only grew stronger. He stared at the screen, whispering to himself, "You picked the wrong neighbor, Karen." The fight was far from over, and this time, Jason was ready to bring the battle into the light. Jason stood in his living room, the glow from his laptop casting sharp shadows on his determined face. The video threat was the final straw. He hit send on the email to the local news station and city council, attaching every piece of evidence he had: security footage, threatening messages, notes, and witness testimonies. Minutes later, his phone rang. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number. "Jason? This is Detective Ramirez from the Willow Creek Police Department." The voice said, "We've been made aware of your situation. We want to meet and review your evidence." Relief washed over him, but he stayed cautious. That afternoon, a small team of officers arrived at his house, cameras in tow, ready to examine everything. Detective Ramirez was professional, thorough, someone Jason felt he could trust. Meanwhile, the neighborhood buzzed with an electric tension. Karen's once impervious. Rain was cracking. Word spread fast about the mounting police investigation. Some neighbors, who had stayed silent, began speaking up, emboldened by Jason's courage. Jason decided it was time for one last act. A community meeting, open to all, to air grievances and decide the future of Willow Creek Estates. As residents gathered in the community center, whispers filled the air. Karen arrived, her face pale but defiant. She took the podium and tried to spin the narrative, portraying herself as a victim of harassment and false accusations. Then, Jason stepped forward, calm, steady. He played the security footage once again, the unmistakable proof of Karen's sabotage. This time, however, the video included footage from a neighbor's camera, capturing Karen secretly meeting with 2 HOA board members behind closed doors, discussing ways to intimidate dissenters. Gasps echoed through the room. Karen's eyes darted. Nervously, Detective Ramirez cleared his throat. "The evidence you've seen is just part of a larger investigation into abuse of power, harassment, and vandalism within this HOA. Several individuals, including Ms. Karen, are currently under review." The crowd erupted, some cheering, others stunned into silence. Karen, realizing the walls were closing in, tried to storm out, but a few neighbors quietly blocked her path. "Not so fast," one whispered. In the days that followed, Karen resigned from the HOA board, and several other members faced penalties or were voted out. Jason was elected to the board, tasked with restoring trust and transparency. But the biggest surprise came when Mrs. Jacobs and Mr. Lee approached Jason with a small, dusty box. Inside were decades-old documents revealing that Karen's family had secretly controlled the neighborhood's HOA for generations, using fear and intimidation to maintain their grip. Jason smiled grimly. The war had been long, but justice had finally prevailed. As he drove his newly repaired car down the quiet streets of Willow Creek Estates, Jason realized that sometimes standing up to a Karen meant risking everything. But the reward was a community reborn, and Karen, she never dared cross his path again.